Are there any grievances? I call the honourable member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. We have some major challenges in front of us as a parliament. I was in this chamber earlier when the member for Corangamite was talking about let's move beyond the rhetoric. And I was sitting there, I was actually in your chair, Deputy Speaker. I was sitting there talking about this, thinking to myself, and I went back to my divorce. And then on, whenever my children would come to me, my two girls would come to me and ask me a story about what actually happened. What actually happened when they were little and when I was married to my first wife. I said, look, there's three sides to the story. There's my side, your mother's side, and somewhere in the middle there is the absolute truth. So, what you have to do is speak to me, speak to your mother, and then you can work out where it fits you. What we see in this place at the moment, and what the member for Corangamite was talking about earlier, is just this pervading wall of political rhetoric at the moment. It just seems that politics is the only game in here, whereas I'd like to move to the world of Parliament. To use a cricketing terminology, it just seems to be very, very hard hands at the moment. There seems to be no nuance around the place. There seems to be, there seems to be no areas of grey on either side. And I'm not casting aspersions at those opposite. And I was in opposition last term, and I know exactly what they're doing. And it's good fun sometimes. But at the end of the day, we have some very real challenges in front of us. Now, the problem we have at the moment is that Labor will say that we doubled the deficit when we came in. What we will say is that, all the big decisions were put off to way beyond the forward estimates or outside the current forward estimates, so they didn't have to be taken into care of. So when we came to government, we had to have a look at the state of the books and we had to readjust. So we would get down to those sorts of things. A friend of mine is a partner in a city legal firm in Brisbane, and his statement is the one I love the most. Perception is neither right nor wrong. It just is. So I understand from Labor Party's perspective why they're doing this. I understand from our perspective why we need to do this. What I would expect from both sides is no matter which way you look at it, no matter which way you frame the debate, we've got some work to do. We've got some work to do. One of the things we always threw at Treasurer Wayne Swan when he was in there was we always said he didn't have an income problem, he had a spending problem. Now, what I try to do with what I try to say in my electorate of Herbert and Townsville is that I'm a politician for 5 weeks of the term, and the rest of the time I try to be a parliamentarian. I try to tell them exactly what the problems actually are. We do have a spending problem. We are spending much more than we are getting in. Now, anyone in business, the member for Lawler is just across here. She's run a school. She understands about budgets. We all understand the consequences of going over budget all the time. So we have to consider what we're trying to do in this space. Now, our first budget, as the member for Moreton, who was just in here, was saying, our first budget addressed a lot of this. What we have to do is we have to curtail spending. Those of us who've been door knocking or doing listening posts or community forums will always know that everyone out there knows we have a problem. Everyone out there knows we have a problem. And everyone has a suggestion on how we can fix it. Most people believe that if we could just make politicians work for nothing, we'd be back in surplus before tomorrow. That's not going to happen, and it's not right either. What we do have to do is that most people will tell you where we can take money, but it doesn't affect them. Paul Keating, my political hero, who would always say, in the race of life, you back self-interest because at least you know he's trying. So I just think that what we've got to do is we've got to move past this. And I think that this year we've tried to present ourselves as the government of delivery. And what we've tried to do, we went to the last election saying we would axe the bad taxes, we would stop the boats, we'd build the roads of the 21st century and we'd fix the budget mess. Now we've axed the bad taxes, with pensioners keeping the compensation for it. We've stopped the boats. We've had one boat. What we've done in this space is very, very good. We've announced over $150 billion worth of roads and infrastructure spending. What Joe Hockey, Treasurer Joe Hockey, said in his speech last year, the equivalent of 8 Snowy River schemes. And I think we've got to move past using historical analogies as well, because when I talk to my kids, they don't know what the Snowy River scheme is. But we do have a problem of fixing the budget, and it's not just the GFC which put us here. all the hard work that was done by the Hawke and Keating governments and the first two Howard governments, all the reforms they did were based on productivity. Everything we did was on productivity. After 2001, look, I was not a member of the party before 2009, 2010, and I can say this with great honesty. Now, after 2001, that government got lazy. The money was coming in, they didn't have to do anything, so what we did was we spent the surplus. So we still had lots of money there, but he had given away, John Howard had given away billions and billions of dollars in tax cuts. Labor came in and we had this fantastic set of books, but really then, with Family Tax Benefit Part B, with the tax cuts, we had spending issues. We had the money in the bank at the time to handle it, but there was no sunset clause on it. Come the GFC, and look, even the most pie-eyed person, even the blackest of black or the whitest of white, has to admit that there were mistakes made. There were some serious mistakes made. The first round of stimulus, we backed. The second round of stimulus, we didn't back. And it's the second round of stimulus with all those issues that came out of it, which has really put us in, really dug the hole deeper. We have some very real issues to come through. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to be a government of delivery. We are talking about those things. Just after Joe Hockey was announced as Treasurer, he spoke at the Australia Institute, I think it was, when he said, you have to do three things. You have to tell people what the problem was, what the problem is. You have to tell them what you're going to do about it, and you have to take them with you on the journey. Now, I honestly thought that because we had spent the previous 3 years in opposition talking about debt and deficit and talking about the problems we have with spending and talking about the structural issues around the budget, and that we've got this line of spending commitments coming at us like a freight train where we don't have the money. I thought that was enough. But it turns out that we had to do more. And I think that's what we have to do. So what we've had to do now, as well as being people who deliver, we have to be people who discuss. Now, I love this thing, the Intergenerational Report. I think it's a great document, and it's a great conversation starter, because this looks at the long-term trends, and this looks at the issues that we're going to have to face. Everyone knows we've got an ageing population. Everyone knows we have issues coming around it. What we have to do is find out what we're prepared to do about it. What am I prepared to do for my grandchildren, although I have none at the moment? Am I prepared to make that sacrifice? So we go down and say, how will Australia change over the next 40 years? How will government budgets over the next 40 years, and preparing for the future? I think Joe Hockey was 100% correct when he said, you have to ask the question, even about the GST. Will we have a consumption tax? Will we have company tax? With capital being so mobile, we've got some very real discussions to have. In property, there are the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps in property are position, position, position. That's all you have to worry about. With the Intergenerational Report, we have population, participation and productivity. And the key to me is about productivity. It's what we have as a succession of parliaments, I think since 2001, have let go. What we have to look at is everything we do should be about participation and productivity, about doing more with less and being smarter with how we do it. We are a great country. We are a country that really prides itself on our innovation. We have to back our innovation. We have to do the right thing there. So we've got the Intergenerational Report, and we must work that into the Taxation White Paper, and we must work it into the Federation White Paper. We've got to have meaningful, productive, well-paid work. And more than anything, we've got to have opportunity for people. I've got a 13-year-old son who really wants to be a marine biologist. His marks at the moment are going to tell me he's going to be anything but. But if he applies himself, I want him to be in that space where he can apply himself and have that opportunity. My city of Townsville is an outward-looking community. We see opportunity, we want to go for it. What we want to do is be introduced to people where we can close the sale. And what we want to have is an organisation, a parliament that will back us, both state and federal, that will back us as an organisation and back us as a community to do what we have to do. This is a great country and this is a great institution. And I think that what we've got to do is we've got to move past where we are at the moment, and we've got to have these conversations, and we've got to be better than we are. And having things like saying it's a budget bill when everything's a budget bill. Everyone knows it's a budget bill. HECS was not an education bill. HECS was a budget bill. And it was passed because it was the right of the government to pass at the time, because it was what it meant to their budget. I want this place to be a better place. I want us to be better people, and I want us to be better parliamentarians, and I thank the House.
Are there any grievances?